Hey game devs, let's talk about making multi-sub object. Now we've already put one texture on here and we've used the slate editor to get that set up. What we want to do in this case is have a different texture for the frame. Sometimes you're going to do this when you're making game models because you want to have a different texture on one part of it than you do on a different. So you can have the higher resolution image for this example and have that in there, but then also have the frame have the resolution it needs to be in there too. So what we have to do to make that work is we have to play with what are called material IDs. And when we do that, then we can make a multi-sub texture. There's a couple ways to do this. There's actually a few ways to do this, but let's just talk about two, maybe because they seem like they tie together really easy. I can attach a texture to any part of this object. I can say like, I want this part by selecting a polygon to be a certain texture and this part to be a separate texture. And what you'll do is you'll start to add all these textures up. When you do that, you make a multi-sub, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So this is kind of deceiving in some ways, but this works fine too. So we're going to grab this and we're going to grab this and we're going to shift and drag a copy. So there's two of them. If we double click on this one, now we have this one. I'm going to call it frame. And if we double click on this one, we're going to change the texture right here. So it's not the picture anymore, but just the frame like that. Okay, so the reason we have two whole textures and not just two pictures is because sometimes we're going to have bump maps and other things that go on with this too. So now we have two textures. I'm going to go ahead and change it around a little bit and move this one above this one for organizing's sake, because I want to make this material 1 and this material 2. Right now, if I click on this object, you'll look down here and you'll see polygon material IDs. It is set to ID 1. I can change it to anything I want right now and it won't change the picture because there's only one material on here, so it's going to assume that it's every ID. But I can type in any number and it will change the ID. Where it gets tricky is when you take and make the multi-sub and drop it on here. Sometimes it does some funky stuff. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to take this standard frame, and you'll look and see this is 1, and I'm going to get out of sub-object mode, so I'm just having the whole object selected, and I'm going to attach strangely enough, I'm going to attach this one to it, and then I'm going to say show me the picture. So now I've got this frame kind of tiling in on itself. I'll show you the unwrap after we get the textures on there. The next thing I can do is I can grab this object or this polygon mode and go grab that picture where the actual painting would be, go to the painting material and throw it on there by itself. And now I have two. But let me show you what's changed. A few things. If I select on this face now, it says 2. If I select on this face, it says 1. So that means this is material ID 1, and I can also select all of material ID 1, and you'll see it's just that whole texture. And I can select this and select all of material ID 2, and it's only that one plane. So I have these two textures on one object, and they're defined by the material IDs they use. Let's go back to the material editor and take a look at this a little bit closer. So right now, it looks like I've just thrown two different materials on there, but what it's done is it's made what's called a multi-sub texture, and you can see it right, or multi-sub object texture material. You can see it right here. Well, you know, I could drag it on here and I could have attached these two to the multi-sub, which I'll show you in a second, or I could have done it the way I did it. The reason I didn't do it the first way is because I don't like the way this piece was acting when I tried it earlier before I started recording. I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to call this picture, frame, and picture. So I have both names, picture, like that. I also don't need 12 or 10, I only need 2, so I can change that by clicking on change set number 2. And then you can see I have these two dots. These are the in text. These are what comes into your material, and this is where your material goes out. In this case, we can throw it, drag it from here to there, or to our own. I could have just done it by dragging it to here and said materials and then gone to general and picked that other one too, by the way, but we're not going to do that. Instead, I want to show you, and the reason I'm not going to do this first is because I think it acts weird. It did earlier. So what I'm going to do is show you what I've done by not actually making us multi-sub. If I just click on this, you'll see that these two materials are being used on this object, right? But if I say here, it'll say multi. Suddenly, I don't have those two textures anymore. I have two different I have one multi-sub material. So how did that happen? What's going on? Well, it made it for me. And since I decided the numbers first by selecting what I want and throwing it on there, it just made the multi-sub. You just don't see it. What do I mean I don't see it? Well, when you want to get rid of stuff in this viewport, you can just select it all and delete. It actually doesn't delete anything that's attached to an object. It only puts it into the scene materials. So if I delete this right now, it seems to have just gone away. But I can also use this little eyedropper up here and make sure I'm not in. Yeah, I'm not in. If I eyedrop on just a specific, it'll just show me that texture, or it should. But I'm going to eyedrop this whole object, and what happens is it brings out the texture, and it brings out the mat, how it's all laid out. It tells me everything about the texture. If we zoom in on it here, it's now got a multi-sub texture, picture, and the two textures that are attached to it. It also hasn't added 20 textures to it. So if I double click on this, then I come in here and I say picture or frame, and then score picture, like that. Now I've got my texture, and if I look down here, now I've got frame and picture, so I have both of them set up. Okay, that's how it is. I can keep adding stuff. If I wanted to add a third material, I need to go to 4, grab this. Oops, I typed 4. Goodness me, I broke everything. Yeah, I broke it all. So what I'm going to do is what I did before. Take the frame, grab this guy, go to this ID, select all of one, and throw the texture on that frame so it's showing up. Okay. And then I can delete these, or I can even just try and do an eyedropper now and see what it does. Let me get out of sub-object mode though and do the eyedropper. And it just reorganized what I had. It just put that other material ID there, double click on it, change it to picture underscore frame. And look at what it's done. Because I jacked things around, now it's renumbered stuff. It's crazy why it does that in this version in the Slate editor, but apparently that's the way it lives. So what I could do in this case is I could take this dot, drag it up to 1, take this dot, drag it up to 2, and then come in here, grab this one, and call it 2. Excuse me. Actually, I did it backwards. I didn't notice that it reorganized my stuff too. So I'm going to grab this one, bring it up here, grab this one, bring it down here, and then take these two and put that one there and this one there. So now I have the picture in the middle. All I have to do is grab this one, whatever that's decided that number is 4, and change it to set ID to 2. I'm sorry, 1. I'm just totally out of it still, I guess. Okay, so 1. Now I've got my materials on one object. Everything is great. It looks like it didn't get the back, or maybe I did do the back. We'll get to that unwrap in a second. If I delete all these and do that texture on it again, just do the texture dropper, it'll organize it back and nice and neat for me. The one thing I will say is that don't forget, one of the key things is you can't have this selected when you try and eyedrop something, because if you eyedrop it with like a frame selected, it's just going to try and, well, I guess in this case it won't, assuming that I had that. Cancel. Yeah, so I guess now it still does the multi-sub. Before it would just show you whatever material you're looking at. Anyway, so, and then I can come back in here also and set the number to 2. Well, let's do this. I'm show you by adding another one. I'm gonna go ahead and right click, materials, scanline, standard, throw something else on this one. We'll go to diffuse, general, bitmap. We'll just throw this on there for now, like that. I'm gonna throw this to 3 and say okay. Now I've still got a multi-sub with 2 IDs on it, but it's got 3 textures. So if I come into 4 again, and I grab like this one, this one, this one, and this one, and I change it to 3, we should and get what this material shows. Unfortunately, I also haven't said show on ID. There you go. So now it's going there. So you can change it on the fly. You can do it that way. You can set it up. And when you set it up, though, honestly, it feels like it always does something weird. So I generally just drop the textures on the parts I want. Okay, so we can also then delete this, and then we're going to get black because there's nothing there. If I come back to here and I change this ID, which I had selected, to back to 1, I get back to my frame. Okay, so that's multi-sub object, and next thing I'll show you is how I unwrap this so it looks the way it does.